This is Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the first new Prince of Persia game in, I believe, like a decade and a half almost. It's kind of crazy, and honestly, it has been far too long. Now, this isn't necessarily, I guess, what you would call a straight-up traditional Prince of Persia game, I guess, at least from the 3D era, right? Because this is a 2.5D platformer, but it is very much in the spirit, the design, and just the feeling of the Prince of Persia franchise, at least I feel so. This is very, very intriguing. So what are we getting here? It's a 4K resolution at 120 FPS. So it is incredibly fluid. It feels great to play here on the Series X. Keep in mind, I can't record 120, YouTube doesn't support it, but yeah, it's just this super high octane fluid experience that feels really great for those more, I guess you would say, fine-tuned and hardcore platforming moments that come up while you are playing the game. So just keep in mind that my character is a little bit more, I guess you would say, upgraded in comparison to what a lot of your characters what your character is going to be when you first start the game. Oh, come on! So some of the tricks and the things you're going to be seeing are going to be sort of like late game mechanics and additions to your experience. So if you're expecting a bunch of fancy tools right off the bat, you gotta earn them. You are a powerful character, though. You are part of this group of immortals. That's what you guys call yourselves. You're the immortals. And there's a situation where a bit of treachery comes into play. There are some individuals that have come in and they have taken the prince, which obviously isn't a great thing because you guys have been at this constant war with these other nations, and now the prince is gone. So you've got to kick it into high gear, and you need to go and save, the prince, right? Holy, there's a lot of chaos going on here. So that is kind of the premise of the story when it first opens up. It's a tale that sends you out to this forgotten location where you are attempting to figure out what's happening, and you'll notice that time works a little weirdly in this place, and you have to just kind of deal with that aspect. And yeah, it is really actually quite fascinating in terms of the narrative delivery, as there is actually quite a lot of storytelling to this game. Cinematics, in-game, I guess you would say gameplay moments, and just quite a lot of really interactive pieces that are quite fascinating to take in. It's actually quite lengthy in that sense. I did benefit from having played this earlier as a preview thing, so I was able to jump along a little bit faster to get to some of the meatier story elements. Holy. But yeah, there is a lot to, I guess you would say, love and enjoy in this one in terms of the story content. Alrighty, so I should also mention that this game has a host of accessibility options. So if you are struggling or you can't do certain things, the game has a lot of elements that can help, like platforming assist. Then there's also the difficulty options, so there are things like really fine-tuning the experience. We're just on normal. You can make it harder, you can make it easier, you can have little elements that make your game better, but you can customize each of these. You don't have to do the presets, but there's presets, and then it changes on like saves or something like that. Now, I'll be honest, this game could be like really quite difficult. I wouldn't say so. World traversal wise, it's not too bad. The game has kind of two ways to go about it. You can have a guided sense, which is kind of what I went for because I needed to get this done fast. But when I first played it and I first tried it, I didn't do the hand holding. So if you do the hand holding, it'll kind of give you like an indicator on your screen. Hey, this is where you're supposed to be going in order to do something. And it just gives you a little bit of a heads up in terms of your goals and your general objectives. Or you can just kind of free play it, if that makes sense. Like, you could just go and head out there and try to figure out where you're going. Because the game gives you, like, puzzle, like, clues, if that makes sense. Like, your quests will have kind of clues as to specifically, like, what you're doing, and you can figure it out, and it's very logical, a lot of it. Like, I didn't really get lost. There's one time I went the wrong way, and that was only because, hilariously, in the guided mode, there's a point where you kind of lose your guide, if that makes any sense. And you kind of sit there and you're like, huh? What am I doing here? And that was kind of annoying, and I ended up going the wrong way, which was pretty time costly, but not too bad, because I was just kind of like, huh? Anyways, movement-wise, it's kind of like, well, I guess I didn't really mention it, but it is a Metroidvania, they call it, right? So you're kind of moving around, you're exploring. How many enemies are there? You're trying to figure out where exactly you're supposed to go, and you're trying to survive along the way. Now, what they do really interestingly in this one, that I'm gonna die here, I think, and other Metroidvanias don't have, and I think this is actually where they are genuinely innovating in this particular genre. I'm gonna have a very fast like save point because I literally did not save at any of the trees, so when I'm done my review I can keep going to where I'm headed, because I've got goals too. I guess we could kind of, we could go down here and take, oh, no, we can't go that way. Anyway, so yeah, it's got this neat system. So when you kind of go to the map, you can actually add like a marker. Okay, well, that kind of doesn't sound very exciting, but you can add a marker. But you can also do like kind of like a picture thing where you are able to kind of like remember a place. I really don't know how to best describe it. But it's sort of like, okay, I've been here, I need to come back here. I guess, you know, the guided mode is, anyways, a little different here. But the idea is that you can create a system, like a quick picture, and be like, okay, this is where I've been, this is where I need to go again or something. And it's just kind of like a nice little memory thing, so you don't have to just try to, like, remember specifically where you're supposed to go. And I thought that was a very, very clever and interesting new mechanic that they added to this particular experience. I was like, oh, you know, that's really, really quite cool and very, very interesting, and something a little bit kind of different. Oh, I messed that up. Something a little different that this game has to offer for the, you know, the genre in general. It's you know, it's a little bit more rare to see innovation in something that has been, I guess you would say, done so many times. So that was kind of cool to see that in action, or at least take a look at that. I kind of want to get out of this area, but like, yeah, I'm gonna have to like really fine-tuningly move through this area. And that's where I'm kind of saying is like, I don't think the traversal is too hardcore, but it can be like sometimes requiring really, really fine-tuned platforming, where some of the stuff is a little hard to deal with. And then, you know, some of the boss fights can be very brutal. There's actually a couple of them where I had to tune it down a bit. And I guess you could like level up your characters, and there's always specific, I guess you would say, logical ways of dealing, with the problems that arise. But like, yeah, some of them were definitely a bit hardcore to tackle, and I was like, oh wow, this is like, there was things going left, right, center, and I was just like, holy, this is kind of crazy. It's like, how am I going to, kind of deal with this? How am I going to survive? Oh, and there's collectibles, there's hidden secrets, there's upgrades. So a lot of the game is focused around building up your character. So we play as this individual here, you kind of have your shining moment, you're going in, your duty is to the prince, stuff happens, and you need to use time and everything like that, just like any of the Prince of Persia games, really. In this, like, original story with, puzzles and problem solving, it's really, really quite intriguing. But yeah, you're kind of building up your character, so you can collect pieces that will increase your health. You can buy with the gems you earn. You can see that in the top right. You can buy more health potions or maybe some better amulets. So the game has these amulets, and you can only have so many amulets, and you can unlock more spaces. You see, like, this amulet takes one, this one takes one, this one takes two, and they do different things, like increase your health or your, your ability to fight, and they're very, very interesting mechanics. Like, they are really a genuinely intriguing mix-up, since they just sort of slightly add a bit of flair to the world, because you are basically should we go over there? You're basically using these things in order to, I guess you would say, solve various problems that arise. It's really, really quite fascinating, and it's just like there's all this complexity to it, and there's this forge, and you can make your blades a little bit stronger. That's what I was saying, is there's a lot of crazy stuff here that you kind of interact with. Oh, thanks for that. It would have been great to have that amulet from you earlier when I did that thing for you that we're, again, because I'm trying to do this in a non-spoiler sense, and I hope you haven't had anything too spoilerish come up, which I don't necessarily think so, considering we're just kind of moving through the world. But yeah, it's just like, it's really, really interesting, this game. I would say I had quite a lot of fun with it. That one part where I kind of got a little lost and I was like directionless was a little annoying. But like, there's some really interesting tricks to this one. Like, they've actually got, can we go here right now? Let me think about this for a sec. They've actually got some really neat stuff that you can set up and do, and you get some really, really cool abilities that allow you to traverse. I'm trying to show you like a really cool thing, but I keep like moving out of the way. There we go, like something where you can like backtrack, and you get a lot of tools, you get a lot of abilities, and there's a lot of different enemies. They actually do a fantastic job of just having this massive selection of like enemies and challenges and bosses, and it's neat. It's like, it's got a good level of difficulty to it, which I think is kind of almost expected for this type of thing. But it's not too ridiculous, and they have enough, kind of accessibility options where I think almost anyone should be able to play this within reason, but it does at times genuinely require a good edge of platforming precision, a good edge of like puzzle solving. There's actually quite a few puzzles in this. They're all pretty logical, but sometimes it will take you a little bit to sit there and kind of figure it out, if that makes sense. Like, okay, what exactly am I doing to do this? Some revolve around time, some about movement, some about setting up the perfect situation. There's a lot of design to the puzzles and to the complexity of the puzzles. And, there is, like with most Metroidvanias, an element of, like, re-going through areas too, once you gain new abilities, it does open up a little bit more for you. It's not ridiculously blatant in the sense of like some games where it's like, oh, you definitely can't come back here until you've, you know, done this, but it is a sense where it does allow you to come back, and it does naturally allow you to move through the area. Now, there is also a little bit of backtracking in some of the areas, which I thought was a bit weird, where you have to kind of like walk for a little bit. Like, obviously the fast travel points help, but there were some areas where it was a bit of an extended sort of like visit, and I was just a little bit perplexed by those. But they also make sense in having you, to a degree, retread an area for a particular reason. I also love this game's indicators. So you see a little bit of gold, that usually means that there is like a checkpoint, which is like your tree where you get your health, and kind of resets it a little bit like it's a Dark Souls type thing. And there is a lot of different environments to this game. Like, you would be, I think, maybe surprised to a degree just how many areas there are. Like, there's literally, you know, like a sands dune area. There's this tree type place that we're in now. There are like huge city structure places and some other surprises here or there. Like, there's actually quite a lot of locales that you visit along the way. It's very, very interesting. And the game itself is very lengthy. Like, there is actually quite a lot of gameplay to this. You would be very pleasantly surprised. Like, if you are, you know, kind of worried about there not being enough action, like, it is quite chunky. You know, this is gonna take you a while to sit here and kind of work through it all, which I think is kind of the expectation, right? Like, you want to have a lot of gameplay that you can work through. And I do love the design of this game too, from the aesthetics to the layout of the level. It's neat to sit here and kind of like, I guess you would say, problem solve, puzzle solve, figure out the challenges. But yeah, aesthetically, I think it is a little bit more kind of last gen looking to a degree. I really do not want to knock this though, because like visually I do really like the art style. I do think it's aesthetically quite pleasing. There's a lot of like backdrop distance and stuff, but like you can sort of tell that it is, you know, something that is definitely with the last gen more in mind visually, just because I think we've seen some 2.5Ds that go a little harder for the aesthetics. The cutscenes are really beautiful, and the music in this game is fantastic too. And all the little fun, there's lots of little fun references and stuff. You know, I was kind of mentioning the collectibles, but there really are genuinely, if you're like a fan of the series, some nice little references kind of tucked away here or there, and I think fans will appreciate that quite a bit. And I hope this has kind of been showcasing the gameplay and allowing us to move through it in a way that kind of gives you like a feel for a little bit of the design, like the traps, the challenges. Just keep in mind, it's so much easier to move through this after I've spent all this time, you know, upgrading the character and fighting and stuff. And I don't even know if my character is really necessarily like fully upgraded too. There's so many more things you could buy and find and gain and gather and then, you know, locate, and there's all these like little other hidden things, and these maps are freaking massive. Like, it's just huge, this game. It's absolutely just huge. There's so many different regions and locations you can visit, and different places you can go to in order to, like, you know, get additional stuff. Very, very clever, very well crafted. It's a very, very good game. It honestly is. It's a really nice return for the Prince of Persia franchise. I mean, I'd love to see the 3D type take again, but like, I'd actually really love to see a full spanning franchise in this design, in this style, because I think there's a lot you could do with it, and I think it works functionally very well. I had a lot of fun playing. Some of the stuff is pretty grueling, some of it's pretty tactical and pretty hardcore, but as I said, you know, there are options if you need to make it easier, and I think that helps a lot, because I was sitting there being like, holy, how do you do this? And then, but most of the time, I was just having fun exploring, visiting, empowering my character, and becoming stronger to take on new challenges.